Hey everyone, thanks for coming by. If you're not familiar with this, basically every Wednesday night and then again on Sundays, I do it with a partner, an old guy I used to work with. I break down police footage that's been trending on the internet and various sites. And the reason I started doing it was because I see so much footage on all the different platforms. People are viewing it out of context, and it's having a major influence on our political landscape in this country. So I thought that I do have a little bit of experience. So I'm a former police officer, and I now study police use of force as a PhD student. So I thought I would add some context to these videos and provide an environment where people can have conversations about what they're seeing and talk it through. So what I do is I'll show a video. I'll start one in a second. And if anyone has any questions or has any comments, just hit it up in the comments and I'll try to address them as we move along. It can get a little busy as we roll along. So if I don't answer a question right away, it's not that I'm not paying attention, it's that we are rolling heavy, so that's good. All right. The only information I have on this one, this is an attempt to apprehend a homicide suspect in Pasco. I'm not sure if that's in Pasco, Texas or California. I think there's a few around the country. I think there's one in New Mexico too. I have no idea. Hey, Shelby.
87 dispatch. Pasco 87. Okay, I'm gonna need you to hold the channel for a second, or for a while. I'm gonna need as many units as we have to head to North 12th, and we need to lock this thing down. We have confirmation that both homicide suspects are inside that residence.
All right, so first thing right off the bat, and Shelby, thanks for coming back. I always appreciate seeing you here. Sorry about Sunday. We had some technical issues and we went off the air to try to fix them, and then everything sort of crashed on us and we couldn't get back up, so I apologize for that. The first thing I notice is that the initial announcement, everyone who hears that's going to be, you know, thinking this is something really serious. A homicide suspect inside of a house. They're both there. They're asking to hold the air. They're going to need as many units that are available to respond. So right off the bat, everyone's going to be on edge, and with good reason, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that violence, the level of violence displayed by suspects, there's an association between that and the likelihood of there being an officer-involved shooting. We can't say these things for certain, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that. So there's good reason to be on a heightened level of alert when you're dealing with something like this.
Boxes here, class. And guys, if you can approach from the east.
Then we have them talking about which direction they're going to approach from, which is great. They're getting like a plan together. That's another great thing. So you're hearing them put together a plan, and then they're also talking about shutting down traffic so that you don't get some civilians, you know, rolling through the neighborhood and if something goes wrong.
Let's get another unit at 10th and Nixon.
There's a bunch of windows facing east.
One more here.
Careful.
Okay. Whatever supervisor are.
Right where that blue car's at, you can cut down into the east side.
Two more here at 12th and Nixon. Get the vehicle.
Hey!
Show me your hands!
Put your hands up!
Juan just ran out the back window on the east
Hands
side.
up! Hands up!
Wow.
Two suspects down, one still firing.
And I'll roll this back and talk my way through it, but
Show me your hands!
Shoot him, he's reloading!
Put the gun down!
thank you very much. I'll turn it up some.
Drop the gun!
Thank you, Shelby. I'm a solo operation, so I
Jesus
appreciate the
Christ.
help.
Yeah. Hey, where'd one go? I think we went north. Hey, we got one down here. Maybe one ran north. Miguel, I think.
Should be a little louder now.
Now I got two subjects down.
I can't see the second.
Hey guys, I'm coming at you from the west.
Thank
in
you.
the alley by the suspects. Coming up. Hey, they're right here. Just go get some next time.
So this is going to be another officer's perspective. We'll play this through and then we'll talk about it here.
All right.
And guys, if you can't approach from the east, we're bottled up here if you come down 12.
We hear that same announcement.
Yeah,
talking about
down
which
there
direction to
off the
approach
bus,
from,
off the street, so-
which is fantastic because what they're trying to avoid is having some officers arrive and people not know which direction they're arriving from and mistake them for the wrong person, or and a lot of people are going to be in plain clothes. So, and it's a situation like this, maybe plain clothes officers. So you want to be knowing where each other are, what direction you're approaching from, and also this thing I've mentioned quite a bit called a backdrop. So if there's a shooting, then the people who are shooting need to be aware of what's behind the person that they're shooting at, because they're responsible for the safety of citizens, not just themselves.
We're gonna have traffic going eastbound.
All right, so this house right here, there's a bunch of windows facing
Let's get
east.
another unit at 10th and Nixon.
There's a bunch of windows facing east. That's their windows, so we want to be careful.
Okay.
And then
And what they're doing, they're talking about where the suspect house is, where the windows face, you know, what directions they face, all that good stuff, so that they're aware. They're sort of getting a plan together. They're gonna get a lay of the land and then discuss how to approach as safely as possible. So this is good. They're communicating, and then it looks like they're sort of taken by surprise. They're sort of in a position right now. They're thinking these people are in the house. They're going to be there for a little bit. Let's get set up on it. You know they could come out, but you're not expecting them to come out right then. That is the impression I get. It seems like they're a little surprised that they come out of the house. And that's not what they were probably wanting. They're probably wanting to turn this into a type of situation where they lock down the house, and then they're able to establish some kind of communications and have these people come out peacefully and surrender and be placed in handcuffs. That's what you're going to want to do. But the first thing they're trying to do is set up a perimeter, that's what they would call it, around the house to make sure that the people who are inside, these are according to the call to homicide suspects. So they're people who've already used a high level of violence in the community, presented ongoing risks to the community. So the responsible thing to do is to isolate them inside of that home and then set up communications and get them to come out.
right where that blue car's at.
Which looks like
cut
exactly
down
what they're trying to do.
Into the east side of that building.
At 12th and Nixon. Get the vehicle.
Hey, show me your hands! Put your hands up! One
just ran out the back door.
hands up!
So they have one run out the door, and then we see, just paused it, we see right here someone emerge from this sort of looks like a little driveway or a back driveway to the house.
Hands up!
And then you see, looks like somebody pointing. It's hard for you guys to see with the chat. But I have a bigger screen over here. It looks like someone pointing a gun, and then I see a second individual behind them. And then I lose vision, and then hell breaks loose, kind of a thing. And it's like an active gunfight at this point. You've got somebody shooting at you. You're shooting back at them, and the objective is to make them stop shooting at you and to not get hit by bullets. So you're trying to get behind cover. He says we have 2 suspects down and 1 is still firing. So to me, that sounds like the 2 people are down on the ground and 1 of them is shooting while still on the ground. It could be that they're laying on the ground and shooting just in like a prone position, or that they've been shot but they're still engaging the police in the gunfight.
Yeah, shots.
He's reloading. Shoot him, he's reloading.
Shoot him, he's reloading. So this is a kind of a situation where if someone's laying on the ground, they've already shot at you and they're reloading the gun, then I think it's very reasonable to think, okay, they're gonna shoot at me again. So if someone's reloading during a gunfight, I would, even though they're not pointing the gun at you in that moment, that act of reloading is what I would consider an act of aggression with a deadly weapon, and I would think it's reasonable to shoot them to stop that threat. I can't see that happening. This is what he's describing, sort of under duress in the middle of a gunfight. I suspect that it's an accurate representation of what he's seeing.
Hey, where'd one go? I think we know.
Whether or not that's what's happening, I don't know, but that's what he's, based on his utterances, that's what he seems to be seeing anyway.
Hey, we got one down here. Maybe one ran north. Miguel, I think.
And now they're giving out directions. They think someone ran north, and he says Miguel, so it's like this is some type of fugitive apprehension squad, or homicide, people tracking down these homicide suspects, but they know who they're dealing with. He recognizes one of them, and that gives you some indication of like how close these people were. You know, this is just down a little small alleyway. They're exchanging a lot of gunfire. That's a pretty intense gunfight.
2 suspects down.
I can't see the second one.
Hey guys, I'm coming at you from the west in the alley by the suspects. Coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna go in through the.
Okay, and this looks like another
house just to the...
another officer's perspective.
First one here.
They want to move them out if it's possible.
Whatever you need us to do.
Well, let's take them behind your car.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna get a slow-mo. Right here, you see this guy emerge. And then you see him pointing, looks like a handgun to me. If it's not, it sure looks like a handgun. Hey, Jennifer, thanks for coming by. Then Shelby says, if the weapon needs to be reloaded, then it had to have been discharged necessarily. I think it's a reasonable justification to continue to engage them with gunfire. Yeah. So what Shelby's saying is, like, if this person is shooting at you and like the gun is run dry and they're reloading it, it's like, you know, the gun is run dry because they've been shooting it. So that's a good indication that they were definitely shooting at you. And yeah, I would agree. I mean, if there are a few instances where it's just kind of like, and I don't want to say no-brainer because there could be more to this that doesn't, I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine, but there's always could be more. That's why you need a thorough investigation. People need to be interviewed. But based on that video, it sure just how it looked like somebody pointed something that looked a lot like a gun, and I heard a lot of gunshots. It sounded like there were multiple, more than just those two officers. But anyway, that's looked like pretty clear cut to me, if that's such a thing.
Watch out.
Okay, this next one here, it's going to be something about a PD cruiser being rammed. And it doesn't give me a location. And again, I don't go through and break these down and review them ahead of time. I just try to respond to them like in real time with you guys.
Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Hands up. Hands up. Oh, fuck. Put it out. Put it out.
Get your hands up now.
Put it out!
And when he's saying put it out, so let's go back a second. You have...
Oh, fuck.
You hear like the oh, fuck, and then him get back in his car, and then he yells, put it out. I think what he's saying is, hey, put this out over the radio for me.
Put it out. Put it out.
Get your hands up now.
Put it out!
And then he grabs... this guy doesn't look like he should be the one putting it on the radio. Well, if you're the closest person,
stop!
You want somebody else to put it out. If you're not the closest person, if you're the closest person because you're the contact person. Well,
Turn it off! Turn it off! Hey, watch the house! Coming around! Stop! Keep your hands up! Alright, hey, relax. Come back here, Dino, come back here.
okay.
Hey, stay off the air.
Okay, I do know this
Tech
one.
2, we have
And just
one
to
down
add
in the
some-
car.
Add some context to this one as well. The person who was in, and I don't know the details, but it says in the description that the guy was wanted for a homicide when this happened. So that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that will make a difference in how I'm evaluating. Because when I first watched this, I'm like, whoa! But then that does change the way I'm going to think about this. But I don't know the total details. Anyway, we'll
We
talk
have a couple
about it.
people in the house. Stay right there. Stay off the air. Tech 2, all officers are code 4.
This is me
And we're
live
just gonna wait for some
in
other units
Sanctuary
before we go from
Cities,
here.
but this is video from
Tech 2 negative.
May. It
Wildwood
was released this week.
and Kelly. It's 22781 Wildwood. Ma'am, you need to stop. Stay right there. Sit down. Sit down on the ground and stay there. And Tech 2, once we get a few more here, we have no movement in the car. We'll get them out, and I know we got fire on the way. I just need you to stay calm right there. And TAC2, you can have everybody just slow their roll to here. Just everybody get here safe. We are code 4. Just waiting for more to go hands on.
And so what I hear here is him putting out that everyone needs to slow down. You can hear it in the background. You hear the sirens. And he's saying, I just need a couple more people to go hands on, but everyone doesn't need to drive that fast. And the reason you say that is because when you're in this type of a situation and you've put it out over the radio that there's a shooting and people know that you're there to apprehend a homicide suspect, that's what it says in the description of the incident anyway. And I'm going on partial information here. This is just something that's just been released. And you hear those cars coming. It's a responsible thing to do to say, hey, like, we're not in an active gunfight here. We need to get a team together to get in here and provide aid to this guy to check on him. They don't know his condition, but we don't need everyone going 100 miles an hour down the freeway and getting into a crash and killing somebody on the road. No rush to come and neutralize a threat. It just means, like, come here and get here quickly, but I don't want anyone to drive 100 miles an hour and end up T-boning someone in an intersection trying to get here because they think that I'm being shot at or my life's at risk. I'm basically, the guy's not driving the car anymore. He's not moving in the car. We need to get up there and provide aid. He says we need to get a team up here, but I don't want people putting the community or yourselves at risk by driving 100 miles an hour.
Stay right there in the house, okay? Just stay right there.
Yeah,
we'll deal with it in a second.
Basically, it's not wanting to create an additional risk. So
oh shit! Sorry, dude. This side, right here.
It may sound a little heartless, but it's really not. It's motivated out of a sense of not wanting to cause more harm by having people come 1,000 miles an hour. Like, it's not going to really help.
Gun, bro.
And I hear him say, so it looked like someone was reaching for the gun. I couldn't see that.
Huh? You good?
Yeah.
You good?
Yes. Good.
He's in the car here, so just watch the house. We don't know who's in the house, okay?
And that's another
so
thing
we got
to be
one right over
concerned
here.
about. So if you're going to apprehend a homicide suspect, a lot of times, and I don't know, it depends on the circumstances, but a lot of times there may be other people who engage in homicides. A lot of the times they are friends with people who are also violent or have a history of violence. So you're also cautious about who is and hasn't. We don't know the rest of the details. It could have been that this was involved, something part of something larger. Who knows? So there's a lot at play. There's a lot of things to be concerned about.
Straps right here. You guys keep an eye on the house. As soon as we get a couple more, we'll take care of who's in the car.
My dog can't decide if they want to be inside or outside of the room here. Sorry about that.
That car's going to be in drive, too.
Yeah, car's in drive. We got one
White
down in the
Fusion.
car, no movement. We have at least 2 people
Hey,
in the
Texas
house who are
Mom.
yelling out at
Good
us.
to see you.
They're semi-cooperative, so we just need to get him taken care of in a second. He's supposed to be armed, so we don't know.
So we hear that he's supposed to be armed. We don't know.
Go ahead, Faye. Yes. Turn. Come this side, guys. This side.
I know, I'm just protecting the sergeant right now.
Okay. Brian.
I forget out.
Brian, come this side. Brian. Nick's got him. We need people to watch the house so we can get him out of the car.
Am I clear to back?
Yes. Come back. Come back.
So they're trying to navigate 2 possible threats here. They're trying to navigate the threat from inside of the house. It sounds like they're not concerned. So like they're worried about the house because they don't know who's inside the house. It sounds like they may be concerned there's another threat from inside of the house. And then they're also saying that the person who they shot was supposed to be armed with a handgun, and so they need to be extra careful. The car description. White Fusion. I don't see. It is. I think it is. I think she means it's a white Fusion, like it's a white Ford Fusion. That's the Ford symbol there. I'm sorry, the Ford symbol, white Ford Fusion. I think it's an actual description of the. Okay, you guys are joking with one another.
Get that shield up. You're gonna shield the house now.
Going to the house.
All right. Ready? Go ahead.
I'm going to go in front of the car.
Do not move. Do not move. Don't move. Police department. That's right. I'll break it.
And you can see there's several bullet holes in the window on the passenger side, on the driver's side, and in the windshield.
I got it. Watching. We don't. Hey, stop!
All right, so this is going to take us back. So they went in and put him in custody. This is going to go back earlier. Carly, I think you're making an early judgment about this being cop friendly.
Turn it off!
Whatever that might mean.
Turn it off!
I know what it means.
Hey, watch the house. Coming around.
Got it.
Stop. Don't move. Stay there. All right. Hey, relax. Come back here, Dino. Come back here.
All right.
Hey, stay off the air.
All right, I want to see that again.
Hey.
Hey, stop!
So normally when I would see this, I would think, okay, this is a big problem. What are they shooting someone in a vehicle for? Because generally speaking, I think it's a terrible idea. Someone's driving at you with a car, get out of the way, and live to fight another day. Usually it's not worth it. And I've seen lots of videos where it's somebody leaving a shoplifting or even a burglary, and they drive in the direction of an officer trying to get away, and it seems like they're trying to get away, but they're driving an officer and the officer shoots the person. And I think that's BS. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think shooting someone while they're driving a car stops that person from hitting you with the car. The easiest thing to do is get out of the way. And when I was an officer, I had people drive cars at me and I got out of the way. That's just what you do. This, in this particular instance, doesn't sound like they're necessarily shooting him just because he's driving at them. So he's driving at them, placing them in danger that's accurate. But they're also here to apprehend this person for a homicide, and they're armed with a gun, and they're fleeing into the community with a gun, and the officers have probable cause to believe that they murdered somebody. I don't know the details of that case, but those facts, and plus the officer saying he sees him reaching down to grab something, it changes things, and you can't just let this person drive away with a gun necessarily. It depends on the case, but it changes the dynamics of the encounter. And in these encounters, when you make a judgment about what an officer did or didn't do, it needs to be based on the according to the Supreme Court, that it needs to be based on the totality of the circumstances, at the time that the officer made the decision to use force, and it's based on what a reasonable officer would have done in that moment, based on what they knew at that moment, and not using sort of 20/20 hindsight. So each case needs to be judged individually. And in this, we don't have enough information to make a judgment. But what I can say is the fact that it was a homicide completely changes the dynamics, because it's not just about ending a threat that's being presented to you or someone in the immediately. It could also be about this person representing an ongoing threat to the community or to officers. So that's basically when I see this is what I'm thinking. So let's see some comments. A moving car is a weapon. That's true, JB. But my argument is that 9 times out of 10, I would say a lot more than 9 times out of 10, like 99 out of 100. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to quantify it. But usually when a suspect is driving a car at a police officer, it's because they're trying to get away and the officer is in front of the vehicle. And that's what's happening. And that is an aggravated assault on that police officer. So you're driving a dangerous instrument, like you said, a car is a moving weapon. You're driving it at that officer. But think about it logically. Does shooting somebody who's driving a car at you stop the car from hitting you if they're about to hit you with the car. It doesn't. I mean, maybe send the car out of control. I mean, you don't shoot, if someone's driving it and I shoot the driver, it doesn't stop the car. It doesn't. I mean, if they're about to drive at me, maybe I shoot them before then, maybe, but if someone's driving at me, it's just not a good, maybe it will work, but it's not the most effective way to do it. The easiest thing to do is like the El Matador and just get out of the way. And I don't think, in the policies across the country, there's a lot of variability. They're tending to go towards just don't shoot at vehicles because it's not an effective way to stop the threat. And when a police officer shoots their weapon, it shouldn't be to punish someone or just shoot them, but it should be to stop a threat that's immediate to the officer, to a civilian, or that in the near future, there's very good reason to believe that they present a real threat to the community. Other than that, you know, there's no good reason to do it. So that's what I would say. Ban guns, help cops. I would say, Carly, that the huge number of firearms that are in the United States, like I think there's more firearms than people in the United States, that really changes the nature of a society. And I know that when I was a police officer, and I I own guns and have shot my whole adult life. Even when I was a kid, like I started shooting when I was like 6, 7 years old with my grandfather. So I've lived with guns my whole life, but I also recognize that when you introduce hundreds of millions of guns into a society, a tense society with violence, interpersonal violence, that when a gun is available, it's just an easier way to kill somebody than it is with an edged weapon or with your fists. So there's a lot of homicides that occur and suicides in the United States that occur that otherwise probably wouldn't be homicides or suicides if it wasn't for the presence of guns. And I would also argue that a lot of the fear that police officers feel in the United States is because of the ever-present nature of guns, that you're constantly worried about encountering firearms, and with good reason, because there are guns everywhere. It's a gun-riddled society. So I would agree with you there, Carly. But there's nothing we can really do about that right now, unless we want to change the whole Constitution thing, because I think it's been pretty much settled that they're here to stay. You gotta smoke them. No, well, I don't think it's that simple. There's no gotta. I mean, yeah. Okay. If I know a car doesn't address the threat of the moving car, agreed. The car's still moving after the driver is shot. Just get out of the way. Yes. I totally agree, unless there's some real crazy reason for it. Like I had an incident where I was at where an officer tried to jump back into his car, and the guy in his car like rammed his car and like drove so that my buddy's car door was crushing his leg in the door frame, and the guy was like leaning on the gas over and over again and rocking it, and you could hear the officer like screaming, in pain. And one of his partners stepped right in front of me and shot the driver, and I thought it was totally justified. And very rarely would I say shooting someone in a car is a good idea. I would think it's the stupidest thing ever. But there are very few and far between. There are instances where it's something that is a reasonable thing to do. But I need a lot of articulation, and there needs to be a lot of good reasons for it. Doesn't make zero guns, but it makes weapons harder to get. If they're harder to get, easily available begins to go away. Yeah, and Shelby, I would say like guns come from someplace. That bad guys, like good guys having guns is the antidote, but burglaries, that's where bad guys get guns. They break into people's houses and steal them and sell them, and then other bad guys buy those guns, or they get their girlfriends to go buy them, or they get friends to buy them in another state. Until you significantly reduce the amount of guns that are being introduced into the society, you're going to have the consequence. And I'm not saying like, we should ban guns. I'm just saying that as a responsible society, we need to recognize that having so many guns comes at a cost. And if that's a cost people are willing to pay, then that's fine, but they should be aware of it. Raging drunk on a night with a knife on my hands and a raging drunk with a semi-automatic. Yeah, and I don't want either, but definitely guns it's easier to hurt people with a gun.
Turn it off! Turn it off!
Continue to fire. And this is something like you see this, and it's brutal. It's disturbing, but when there are certain instances where if someone murders somebody and they're trying to flee into the community, it depends on, again, the totality of the circumstances, but there may be instances where just shooting that person is a reasonable thing to do. Plus they're driving at you and there's that extra element of fear.
Watch out.
Well, I would say, Carly, that I'm not saying that responsible gun owners cause problems. I'm saying that as an individual responsible gun owner who buys a gun, practices with it, cleans it, keeps that shit in a safe, keeps it locked up, doesn't leave it laying around, they do a good job, they go practice regularly, they're good responsible gun owners. I have no problem with that. I'm a responsible gun owner myself. But I would also admit that when you have millions of responsible gun owners, that a certain number of those responsible gun owners, their homes are going to be burglarized, and those guns are going to be put in the hands of non-responsible gun owners. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, it's just the way it is. Like in Canada, if you go break into houses, you're not going to come across a hell of a lot of guns. But if you go out like Arizona, where I policed, and I just went and broke into 10 houses, I'm going to find all kinds of guns because everyone's got a gun.
Keep your hands up.
Exactly. Like Shelby's kind of hitting the nail. And I'm not
Keep your hands up.
I'm not blaming
Hands up.
people, the gun owners.
Oh, fuck.
Okay,
Put it out.
Backing up.
Put it out.
Get your hands up now.
Put it out.
And if this was any kind of other crime, I would say those officers just need to get out of the way. You know what I mean? Like, why are you even boxing the car in? Just let it go, let it go. But it's a homicide, so that's the reason.
Get your hands up.
And with all of these things, there's like an exception.
Turn it off.
Because none of them, there are so many variables at play with each of them that you can never just generalize and make a judgment about any of them, because there could always be some kind of unknown variable, even after you've conducted very thorough investigations. Okay, so this one we've got, and thank you for everyone coming by. I really appreciate it. And if anyone, I know there's some of you guys just kind of lurk around. You don't chime in with comments. I say thank you to you guys as well, because I see you coming back on a regular basis, and I won't out you here, but I appreciate it. Let's see, you said the propane tank. Let me go back and look at that, Thomas. I didn't catch that part.
Watch out.
Drive too.
Yeah, cars in drive, we all taken care of in a second. Go ahead, Faye.
Let's see if I can see it.
This
Can
side,
you
this
give me
side.
more details on? Oh, you're talking about behind a camper, probably.
Brian, watch the house so we can come back. Get that shield up. You're going to shield the house now.
Go into the house.
All right.
Hey, Carly, I appreciate it.
Ready? Do not move.
And I think he's talking about the propane tank. I'm assuming you're talking about this. And that, it could be. Okay, we'll see you. We'll see you later, Texas Mom. If you're taking off, it's always good to see you. And I saw your stream, actually, one of yours. You were on Texas. Everyone, check out Texas Mom's Periscope. She's funny, and I saw her do. She was on a ride going to visit her man down south on a freeway, just talking up a storm. So anyway, we'll see you later. And yes, the camper. So. Yeah, I mean that's a concern. So these officers were behind there, and you could hit that, propane tank. I mean that would be kind of. Oh, you're not leaving yet? Okay. I need to. My problem is like the chat is up in the corner, and I don't necessarily like pay as close attention as I should because I get caught up in talking. So just ignore half the things I say, guys. And yeah, that could be something you want to think about. Whatever. So whenever you're discharging a firearm, whether it be in the woods, on the firing range, or in a gunfight, one of the things, the basic rules is what's in the foreground of your target. So you have your target, you've made the decision to engage that target and discharge a firearm at that target. You have in your mind made the decision you're willing to let that bullet go, that it's that severe of a threat that you're willing to do it. You can't do that unless you've sort of given a damn good thought to what's behind you and what's in front of the target. And if there's something behind there that could cause where people are at risk, then you need to consider that. And this, I wouldn't be as worried about the propane tank as I would be worried about someone being inside of that trailer or someone being inside of that house. So those officers need to be, hey, Carrie, good to see you. Guns are more acceptable here. No, I think guns are acceptable everywhere, Carly. Like every city I've ever lived in, like all my friends, everyone's own guns. I think it's a big part of American culture. I think most people, like, unless they live in some certain, really blue districts in this country, are not familiar with guns. But I think most Americans, it's really deeply ingrained in our culture. So, and I live in a rural area too. We live in a small town in the Midwest, and everyone owns guns. So what I would be concerned about is who's in this trailer and then who's inside of the house, more so than the propane tank. And a lot of that can be addressed, but with the angle with which the officers engage the vehicle. So like if you're firing sort of down, the backdrop isn't necessarily the house. It could be if you're coming at an angle, it could be the engine block or the dash of the suspect vehicle. So like you can, if you're good and accurate and you have good angles when you engage somebody, you can mitigate the risk of your backdrop risk. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I would be more concerned about human bodies being somewhere, because this trailer is not going to stop anything. That's just a thin little tiny. If anyone's ever been in like a camper trailer, like you could put your fist through it if you got angry. All right, let's see here. No, so I was. Someone just asked if I became a police officer like right out of high school. I got out of high school and then I went in the Army, and went in the Army for a few years, got married, we had a little girl, got out, started going to college a little bit, left and went overseas and was studying China. In China, I was studying Chinese, trying to learn Chinese. I wanted to get into like federal government work, working for like the State Department maybe. So I went over there to learn Chinese. We were over there for a few years, and then came back to the States in 2004, 2005, and became a police officer out in Arizona. And then, so 2005, and then was a police officer till 2014. And then now I'm in St. Louis at the University of Missouri, working on my PhD up there. All right. So basically, yeah, I addressed that question. Let's see if we got any more, especially more Sports in Paradise. Am I fluent in Mandarin? So I was never fluent in Mandarin. I wouldn't say that, but I got to the point where I could. So when I became a police officer, there were several times where I used it. Like I worked as like doing a little bit of like interpreting in Chinese with my Mandarin. Like one case in particular where it was like a series of home invasions where I went and helped convince some victims to testify in court. Other times I get called out to work on like some human trafficking stuff just because they needed somebody who spoke Mandarin. So I got to the point where I could like sit down with somebody and get them to describe somebody. I could go shopping. I could probably work in like a really sort of menial sort of job somewhere, like where there's not a lot of abstract thinking involved, and get by and function on a day-to-day basis. But it was like very crude. I had a terrible accent. My vocabulary was very limited, and I didn't have great reading skills. Like I could have like breeze a newspaper and get the gist of an article maybe after a while, but I was. My daughter, on the other hand, check out my Twitter. I put up a video of her on Twitter recently of her speaking Chinese, and she was completely fluent in Mandarin, and she also learned another Chinese language called Shanghai Hua, and then she picked up Cantonese just on a road trip. She over the course of 3 years, she got to the point where her Mandarin was as good as, like, on the phone you wouldn't be able to tell she wasn't from China, and she didn't move there till she was 3. So anyway, I'm talking about my kids here. Let me get back to video. And my little guy was born while we lived there, and his first language was Chinese because we spoke it so much. His first words were all Chinese. Okay, so this one is going to be a hostage situation in Salt Lake City. And already So said more. Mark said more challenging than Spanish or French, I assume. Yeah, I would say a lot more challenging. But it's hard for me to tell because I was able to immerse myself there. So like living there full time really changed it, because you need, like, if I wanted to get something to eat, I needed to speak Chinese. So it was a really quicker to learn that way. When I tried to learn Spanish, it was more like easy to get away with not speaking it. I had a partner who spoke perfect Spanish, so it made it much harder. I think that's a polyglot. Is that a person who can speak a bunch of languages? I think it is. School me up, Shelby. I think it is. All right, so he looks like he's holding some kind of weapon in his arm, and he's holding her by
Step it up.
her.
Drop the knife and...
Drop the knife. Okay, right here, we've got this guy armed with a gun, armed with a knife, and he's holding this woman, and it doesn't look like she's willing. Yeah, so I think she is. So she's learning Latin now, Shelby, and she's taken to it really quick. She's learning it for her. She's just started grad school, and so she's been learning it because she's interested in like medieval literature and stuff. And so she's taken to that really quickly, and I think she can learn anything if she wants to.
We'll tase you if you don't stop. Stop right there. Hey!
All right, so what I was saying is that right here, when I see him holding this knife and I see this hand holding her, I'm not sure if I would need to know what the circumstances are, but I don't want him wrapping that knife around her neck. And I've got a little bit of space between him and her. It already looks to me like he's kidnapping this woman and is holding her hostage with a knife, and she must be terrified, and that ain't cool. I don't know. It could be some more to this I don't know about, but if I responded to this and I saw this, at this point already, I would feel comfortable. I mean, if I honestly thought that this person was holding, unless I thought, oh, well, he's not holding her at knife point, this is them together and they're trying to get away and use this as some kind of ruse, but I would need really good reason to think that. Unless I had like unbelievable, like really strong reason to believe that, I right now would think this person is kidnapping this woman at knife point, and I don't want him to hurt her, and I don't want him to get in a position where I can't intervene and get him away from her. So I will tase you. So right now, with him holding this knife and forcing her down the road like this, I would be already, I wouldn't have, this guy's got his taser out. I don't think I would be on a taser right now. I think I would probably already be considering this a deadly force encounter. That's just sort of my initial thoughts, because my obligation here is not to him right now. I have an obligation to him, but it's not my primary obligation. My primary obligation, and this is crude and it may sound like really heartless, but there's a prioritization of life that occurs, and you look at the situation and you say, okay, right now this person is imposing their power and their will on this person with a knife. This person doesn't want to be here and they don't have the ability to get away. This person has an option to let them go. They're not complying. I'm not going to let this person get stabbed or get their throat cut or be taken hostage and then have to endure that. So I would be inclined to, I would be on my gun, first of all. And then if I had a good clear shot to shoot this person, then I would strongly consider that as a viable option.
Don't stop. Stop right there.
He's on the taser,
hey!
And he used that time to hold the knife to this woman's neck, and this officer still has his taser out. That taser needs to go away because this is not a tasing situation.
He's got a hostage.
And I would argue that this is a situation where that this officer took too long.
Put it down.
I saw another video where something similar happened and the guy slit the woman's throat.
Put it down.
This person holding a knife could be in some type of mental health crisis, not thinking clearly, and this person doesn't deserve to have their neck cut. Again, unless this is some type of ruse we don't know about.
Dude, it's not worth it. Put it down.
And this is going to be the other officer's angle.
I guarantee you, dude. I promise you. Look, I don't make promises I can't keep. I don't make promises I can't keep. I promise you that.
I like the verbal from this officer, this just sounds like she got there after this guy's already sort of taken this woman hostage. You hear the original officer say he's got a hostage, and this woman responds, sounds like a woman, I'm making an assumption, but sounds like a female officer, is not just saying the same thing over and over. My friend Sean calls it like the goofy loop, where you just say, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife. She's trying to engage him, like, I'm going to make a promise, I keep my promises. She's trying to talk to this person, establish some type of communications, and I appreciate that.
Hey, look, dude, it's not worth it.
I would say no. So someone just asked, do you back off to get the perpetrator to relax? And I would say no. This person has a knife to this person's neck. I'm looking for enough space to shoot him, I think, right now. I'm not going to let him wrap that knife around that person's neck. And if I can't, that's just me, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a hostage negotiator, but I know me as an individual, if I respond and this person has got a knife and they're putting it to some woman's throat and trying to take them down the street, I'm not going to give them space. I want to stay close, and I want to end that threat for that person, because they could slit their throat. Unless I have a good reason to think that there's some type of relationship, that's not going to happen, that she's allowing this to happen or told him to do this, something along those lines, that's different. But if this woman is being dragged down the street, then you have an obligation to intervene. I know I wouldn't want the police to leave me.
It's not worth it, dude.
And so what I see this officer just makes the decision to shoot. She felt like she could get a round off, and I don't know what her firearms abilities are. I know, like, what I saw there, I saw enough of a target. I would, given what was happening, I would feel comfortable shooting. And sounds like she, I don't know which rounds hit. There's no way for us to know, but she hits him. More space is created, and the victim sort of rolls off of the suspect, and the second officer engages him with gunfire as well. And this is tragic. No one likes to see anyone be shot, but there are just some certain circumstances when someone grabs somebody and is putting a knife to their throat that it's perfectly reasonable to intervene with deadly force as far as I'm concerned. So let's go to the next one here. We got another one. I'll have this one as critical incident from June 22nd. So before I move on here, let me see if there's any questions here. Let's see here. The multiple rounds after he released the woman seems unjustified. He had to be standing there stunned by the first over. He was stunned by the first. I would agree with you. It does seem like, wow, they didn't need to keep shooting. But when I see that, I also see a person who's standing there with a knife. They've been reeled back, but there's no reason to think they can't, like, they're still within just arm's reach of that woman. And he hasn't dropped the knife. He hasn't gone down to his knees and complied or put his hands up in the air to surrender. He's taking the rounds, but the threat has not ended. And it's crude, and it's like horrible, and it's hyper violent and disturbing. To see a person make the decision to shoot a person who's already been shot and doesn't appear to be actively attacking that woman. But when you really, if you sit there and you think about it, he still presents an existential threat to that woman's life. He's already been hyper violent to that woman, dragged her down the street at knife point, and then put a knife to her throat. And he's still standing there with the knife. So I'm okay with continuing to discharge your firearm until that threat is no longer a threat to that woman. Until cornered. Yeah, he was cornered. I would agree, Mark. So Mark saying, like, the person didn't raise the knife to the woman's throat until he was cornered. And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, give them space, let them have more space. But when you introduce a hostage like this, you've got to corner that. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, people may disagree, but in my mind, I'm not going to let that person get away with that victim and get somewhere. I don't know what they're going to do to them. I'm just not going to, because I just think what I would want is I would want the police to intervene. So I think, yes, he did feel cornered and put the knife to the throat to send a stronger signal, and it did escalate the situation, but I wouldn't feel safe just backing off and giving this person distance with this once you're already there. And that's just me. It could be that I'm wrong, and it could be that that's a poor decision, but that's just based on how I, as an individual, and what would come with having to shoot that person. That's the decision I would make. Going to have to kill someone? No, I don't think so either. Like, I don't think these officers showed up and said, "Hey, I want to kill this guy." They showed up. This person has a knife to a woman's throat, and this woman who discharged the first rounds, I think she tried to engage this person and then made a calculation and said, "Wow, this I need to help this woman from getting cut," and shot the man. And the second officer continued to fire until he was no longer a threat, till he went down. So I don't really have any issues with it, other than it's disturbing, which like a lot of these are. Yeah, so it can happen at sort of any day. It's definitely something that officers do think about, but I don't think officers, I'm sure there are crazy people in every profession who like go in and like are wanting to just because they, but I didn't know anyone who was like full of bloodlust that wanted to go murder people. It wasn't just people I worked with. All right, so the next one here is going to be from Palm Desert, California. And again, give it a second for audio.
I'm Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. I would like to talk to you about a deputy-involved shooting that occurred on June 22nd. When we have a critical incident, we want to share as much information as possible as soon as the investigation allows. In this incident, we received an alarm call at a gun store located in the city of Palm Desert. Our deputies responded to the business and found a vehicle had crashed into the front of the business.
And thanks for everyone checking out the stream.
When the suspect
I really
emerged from the
it.
store, he pointed what appeared to be a semi-automatic rifle at the deputies, and a deputy
hit follow and follow the channel.
As a warning, some viewers may find this video disturbing, and it is not suitable for children.
And if you find it useful and you're on the YouTube platform, please hit subscribe. I'm trying to make it to 350 before my buddy Sean comes back. So I'd appreciate any subscriptions.
Security camera footage captured the male suspect scouting the location and then...
So I got a question here. Is this part of an officer training program? So what these videos are, Mark, that's a great question. Brought in live streams. Yeah, it is hard. I would agree, Shelby. It is extreme. It bothers me to watch that, but when I think about it, that's just, again, like my sort of judgment call on what I would feel comfortable doing, and it's different for everyone. So Mark says, is this part of an officer training program? No, these are videos that police departments around the country, there's different levels of production. Like LA does these really slick ones. NYPD is not that great, I don't think. But they basically are trying to create a product that they can inject into the culture that explains and what they're doing. So to try to, like, it's a form of propaganda, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying that the police departments are saying people, like I'm right now doing this because I see people watching these videos, and I'm like, well, I think people need a little bit of context. And the police departments are responding in the same way, and they feel as though that people are viewing these incidents out of context, and so they want to add context. So they're like, well, we're going to get public information requests to release our body camera footage anyway, and some journalist is going to put it in their newspaper and say we murdered somebody for no reason. But instead, what the police department says is, well, let's package that in a product where we explain our procedures, we show the video, and control how this is distributed amongst the population a little bit. And I'm not saying it in a negative way. I think it's what police departments should do, because earning the trust of your constituency is vital, and people value transparency. Mac just said transparency. And that's what this is. This is the police department saying, we're going to try to be as transparent as possible and try to control this message by explaining what's happening. And I think it's a good thing for a department to do, because, like I said, people are going to watch this anyway.
Repeatedly ramming
it's better to have somebody explain it.
The building to gain entry.
And they try to do a decent job of it. I don't see a lot where I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. They seem pretty good. Yeah, and they try to show us. I think they do a pretty good job of trying to be transparent, and I think it's that people appreciate transparency, especially nowadays. Okay. And I wasn't paying attention to the intro of this like I should be, so because I was talking and not doing my job. Yeah, we got them rammed. Like just waiting there. Okay, now he's getting out of the vehicle. Yelling something. Let Portland rot. They aren't receiving that. I like Portland, Davey. Portland's a great city. It's one of my favorite cities in the country, actually. One of my biggest regrets is that I was there and I didn't get to. Yeah, it does looks like a drunk. Is what I would guess. And it was Ray Charles was playing there. And I could have got tickets for like $30, but I was a private in the Army and I didn't have enough money. So I couldn't go. And if someone said, hey, you can live in any city in the country and you can afford it, then Portland would be, whoa, that is crazy. He just like totally rammed that. Portland would probably be one of my top 5 cities for sure. Or towns. I love it. People are nice, good food, good restaurants.
Valley Guns and Tackle, 41945 Boardwalk.
Okay, so this is a gun shop.
41945 Suite R.
So this person
glass break, front entry door,
rammed their car into a gun shop. That changes things a little bit. I was thinking this guy was just hammered.
Third to the back also.
And then we got 2 units rolling
to the
in.
alarm on Boardwalk at Coachella Valley Guns and Tackle. We are now on landline with. He's the owner of the business, saying that a vehicle was driving through the front door and had visual of 2 subjects inside the store.
Wow.
The suspect.
So what you have is you have an alarm call comes into the police department, and the city, the dispatcher hits up the patrol cars and says, hey, there's an alarm at this address at a gun shop. The officer's like, oh, I'll go. First one says, I'll go. Second one says, yeah, I'll tag along. It's no big deal. And then the dispatcher's like, hey, just be advised. We just get a call from the owner of the gun shop saying that that he sees that someone's rammed a vehicle in and there's 2 subjects now inside of the gun shop. So you go, as a patrol officer, you go to alarm calls all the time, and you shouldn't assume this, but you usually just assume that it's just an alarm call. But when you hear someone's watching live on video and there are suspects inside and it's a gun shop, then I would be thinking, oh, I bet if I was going to go break into a gun shop, I probably already have a gun. But I do love Seattle and Denver, special place in my heart. Denver's a great city too. All right, let's.
Can be seen here
Seattle's
on security camera footage
Seattle.
inside the gun store with what appears to be a semi-automatic rifle in his hand.
Now he's holding a gun. Looks like a semi-automatic. Looks like an AR-15, but like shorter.
Deputies arrived and quickly contained the area by setting up a perimeter
There's so many
around the
different kind of
business.
modifications
2 deputies took a
nowadays,
position next to an electrical box, and a 3rd deputy took a position next to a
looks
parked
a little
pickup
smaller
truck.
than a
Deputies
AR-15,
announced
but-
themselves, gave numerous commands, but the suspect never responded.
But again, you can buy so
The
many different
following
kinds of
security
kits
camera
modify
footage
things so
and
much
deputy
nowadays.
body cam footage
I sound old.
shows when the male suspect exits the gun store, points a gun at deputies, and a deputy-involved shooting occurs. There were no other suspects involved.
And thanks to all the Periscope folks. I know you guys are always on here, and I really appreciate it. Got Mac,
right there,
Texas
put your
Mom,
hands up! Hey,
bunch of
hands
Periscope
up!
people.
Hands up!
Davy Jones coming from Periscope. Man, I can't see that. What he sees.
Hands up!
Well, he's correcting some kind of malfunction, maybe.
Put your hands up!
Yeah, it's honest. The whole part of the country is nice. If anyone works out in Western Washington, I'd love to get a job out there when I'm done school. And Spokane. Yeah, I love Western Washington.
He seems to be down.
He seems to be down.
Hands up! Hands up! Hands up!
All right, so here's another angle. See someone come out. All right, looks like, I think this guy is hammered. I think this is breaking in. You guys can't see it because of my picture. Damn. Let me. Bring it over a little bit so you guys can see him. And he's holding right here like pretty clearly looks to me like some kind of like AR-15 type semi-automatic rifle with look like an extended like a 30-round magazine. And it looks like he just charged it, and he's standing out here facing the officers. And before they're giving commands, and so he just pointed it at the officers. They're giving him commands.
Here is a replay of the suspect's actions at half speed.
Okay, comes out. And here's the thing, you gotta think, if I'm an officer, it's nighttime, I'm responding to a burglary call, comes over the radio that it's at a gun shop and that the suspect is seen on camera inside of the gun shop, and then I have a guy emerge from the gun shop with what looks like an AR-15 and points it at me. I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, this brings up the subject of gun control. Like what we were just talking about, right? The guns, so many guns. There's no gun shops in Canada where you can just break in and steal an AR-15 and point it at the officers. Maybe there is, I don't know about, but so yeah, he's leveled what looks like a semi-automatic rifle. You don't know what it is, but sure as hell looks like it. Doesn't look like he's discharged any rounds yet. Yeah, I would agree, Mark.
Aaron Solorio Granados, a 33-year-old male from Palm Desert, died at the scene. The weapon recovered at the scene was a highly realistic-looking pellet gun.
It's a pellet gun. So when I see this, I see a collapsible stock with some kind of optics on there. It looks like Knight's Armament, which is like a legit manufacturer, like a high-end manufacturer, not high-end, but a good manufacturer of firearms. This looks just like charging handle. I mean, you bolt right here. It looks like he's got like a little suppressor on the front and a modified grip. And these things are so modifiable. If I saw this, someone come out of a gun shop, this is a real gun. Even if I saw this laying on the ground and looked at it up close, until I got a hold of that charging handle and picked it up, I wouldn't know what it was. So, yeah.
Replica of a semi-automatic rifle. When we have a deputy-involved shooting, multiple investigations are automatically launched. In this incident, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department
it looks
will
like
handle the investigation of the
tactical
original call,
that someone on
Mr.
a SWAT
Granados'
team
actions
would
when
have.
he exited the gun store,
and the deputy
Mark's
saying, like,
shooting.
what business do people have
This
with those kind of
incident,
weapons?
as are all deputy-involved shootings, will ultimately
America, it's
be
part of the
reviewed by
culture. It's just the way it is. But I, as an individual, I'm like,
Additionally,
even though
our department will internally review and evaluate the
know,
actions of our deputies with our
because
policy
it's
and
like a
training
versatile
standards.
weapon system I'm familiar
We
with.
take the use of force very seriously and make every effort to de-escalate these situations
It's kind of
whenever
ridiculous
possible.
when you think about it.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, I would say that's it looked like an expensive long gun, especially with the like Knight's Armament. It's not just doesn't look like just some knockoff. It looks like a legit firearm. So I don't blame the guys for thinking that was a real threat. All right, so the next one here is going to be officer kicks a man. So let's see what this is. Sounds like there's some kind of active pursuit. Someone's coming out of somewhere. He's coming back on 4th Street.
Stop!
He sees the suspect. He's chasing
You're gonna
him.
get tased! Stop! Get on the fucking ground now! Stay on the ground! Do not move! Do you understand?
Right, he's complying. Yes, sir. Everyone's assed up. Oh, okay. And he just kicked the man in the face for no reason. So I normally say you can't know until you have all the facts, but this person was laying, so what I typically say is you can't know what happened on these videos until you actually interview everyone, you have all the facts, because there could always be some sort of extenuating circumstances, but at that point, that was all on video, and that man, it doesn't matter what he did, he could have killed somebody. He could have murdered. He could have gone into a school and shot up the school. When he lays down on the ground and he puts his hands behind his back, and the officer gives him a command to do something, and he says, "Yes, sir." He's completely compliant and non-resistant, and in that he may still be a threat. He may have a gun in his waist, but who knows? But there is no way that anyone is going to be able. I mean, maybe there's some. I'm under some. The videotape has been altered. Maybe, I don't know, but there's no way you can justify that. That's aggravated assault. You kick somebody in the head, there's a reasonable expectation that you could cause serious physical injury to that person, or a concussion. You could kill somebody by kicking them in the head. And you're doing it under the color of law while the person is submitting to you because you're giving them a lawful order to do so. It just aggravates this in so many ways. And it's images like this and videos like this there's nothing that you can say to justify this. It's disgusting. And officers chasing people, they're all pissed off.
Stop!
Too bad you don't get to do that. And right now, they're being rough with them.
In custody. Is this the same guy we got off the tower?
No, this is just ridiculous.
Dispatch, you can release the channel.
Yeah, we just got the end of the chase, Mark. I would say, like I was just saying, it doesn't matter what this guy did.
Secure my unit.
When somebody surrenders to the police and they say yes, sir, and they put their hands behind their back and lay prone on the ground, it's just like a soldier. I mean, if you're in a battlefield and the enemy lay down in front of you and put their hands behind their back, you don't shoot them in the head. People can give up in a foot pursuit. So if you're running from the police,
I came around Pine. He darted out right here.
well, and then he racks him up against the vehicle.
I was sitting right over there. He had a toy.
I'll tell you in a second.
I don't blame that guy for screaming. Imagine getting kicked in the face. You're laying there on the ground, and then someone kicks you in the face.
Right here.
Yeah, Shelby, that's exactly it. I mean, the damage that something like this does to the profession is profound. And this shit has happened for hundreds of years. It's just part of when you get. I'm going to go on a little. This is pretty much over. When you get armed men, mostly men, and you send them out into the street to deal with all kinds of crazy social problems, and you give them an incredible amount of power. Like, you guys heard about those experiments they used to do where they would shock people, but it was at the university experiments back in the day where they would sit people down and they would have students shock other students, and they thought it was real, and they would just keep shocking them and do all kinds of horrible things. But when you give people power over other people, people are going to do horrible things eventually. It's going to be a certain amount of that takes place, and that's always been present in policing. It's, I think, over the years gotten a lot better because police departments do a better job of writing regulations, enforcing regulations, training officers. It's improved, but it still happens. And the fact that so much is being recorded, we're going to see tons of this, and the damage that this does. You could have 1,000 positive interactions with the community, but people seeing this one time is so profound and sticks in people's brains that it undoes all of that and more. And I worry that policing as an institution, I'm not sure how sustainable it is in an environment where images like this are so readily available, because this isn't going to go away. No matter how much you train people, no matter how much you do to improve policing, the very nature of policing, it's the use or threat of physical violence to compel people to comply with you. And when you get people and you give them that power and send them out into the community, there's going to be a certain amount of extrajudicial use of force like we just saw. But hypothetically, if he had stuffed some children to death, probably a human reaction to get angry enough to forget professional guides. That's true, Mark, but it still wouldn't be an excuse. We give police officers so much power in this country that we and police officers recognize this. Like police officers I know say, yeah, police officers are not above the law. You don't get to engage in vigilantism. You don't get to do. Now, if so let's say an example, if I'm a patrol supervisor and a police officer gets in a foot pursuit and the guy turns around and throws a couple punches and there's an exchange of punches and I deem, that officer threw one last punch that maybe they didn't need to, it was a little bit over the line, does that person deserve to be fired for that necessarily? I think there are a certain amount of where the person is disciplined, they're counseled, better training. People do make mistakes even, and it should, it's a certain amount to be expected. But something like this is just so flagrantly abusive and violent that it's so far beyond the pale that it's completely unacceptable. Even if the person were, no matter what they've done, you've got to respect. Also, another thing is respecting the right of people to surrender. If police go around and doing this to people and don't let them surrender, then people aren't going to surrender to the police. Why would I surrender to the police if I'm going to get my ass kicked? I surrender to the police because I don't want to get into the fight, and I don't want them sending the dog in. I don't want them chasing me down the alley and kicking my ass. I want this to be over, which is what you want as a police officer. So if I'm this kid next time and I'm running from the police, I'm not going to stop. I might shoot it out with them. I'm not going to get kicked in the head. So it's just damaging in so many ways. To things like humans, I expect them to be trained officers capable of keeping their heads under stress. I agree, Shelby, we need to have just such a high standard. I agree. Publicly available of a complete publicly available video of the complete George Floyd incident. Yeah, there's several. I think people have pieced all the available footage together to this point as well. Even the stuff like before the incident. I think some of it's low quality where it's been filmed with a camera, but they haven't released everything yet. But I'm assuming all of it will be officially released. But there are unofficial versions out there as well, if that makes any sense. Exactly, why would you surrender? I think that's a huge part of it. There's just so many reasons that this particular incident just doesn't fly. And my assumption is that this kid is going to file a complaint. They pull the video, and that officer has not a leg to stand on. They're going to resign, or they're going to get fired. And then this kid is going to file a major lawsuit, and he's going to make a fortune. And he should, because no American or any other human being, when they're surrendering, no matter what they've done, should get kicked in the face. It goes back to medieval times, people can surrender. It's gross. The camera is revealing content that's been hidden in the past. Yes, absolutely. So there's lots of things that you in the past. So like the George Floyd homicide, I call it a murder because it looked like a murder to me. I guess it's a homicide that no one's been convicted yet or whatever, but it looked like a murder to me. So 20 years ago, that officer would have put his knee on George Floyd's neck. The bystanders, low income black folks, maybe would have complained, and their complaint would have been taken by a patrol sergeant. Maybe someone from internal affairs would have taken a report. They would have interviewed the police officers. The police officers would have said he was resisting the whole time. They're lying. He was resisting. 3-4 officers say he was resisting. You have 3 or 4 citizens saying he wasn't. And then they would have done an autopsy. They would have looked at the report and said, oh, he had these underlying medical conditions, which you saw them release. And they just said, oh, it was, an in-custody death, unknown, nothing probably would have happened. But now, with these technological changes, it is a society-changing event, because it's something that's so visceral, so visible. I was just writing something about this, that it's like it was designed in a Hollywood studio to be as disgusting as possible. Just think about, there's a great guy, if you guys want to check out a great channel, there's a guy named Roderick Graham. He's on YouTube, Roderick Graham. He's a professor at Old Dominion. And he talks about, he cites another person who talks about the ideal victim, how George Floyd was the ideal victim. He's a black man, he's handcuffed on the ground saying, I can't breathe, which is the phrase which has a lot of residents, I can't breathe. Think about the officer leaning over his neck with his knee, and he's with his hands on his hip. He's almost in the same position as Colin Kaepernick is during the protests. When you think about like the visual of that, and he's crying out for his mother, his dead mother. So imagine like mothers hear that, how heartbreaking that is for them to hear that. That you hear the onlookers begging for mercy. I hear one of the onlookers talking about how they know jiu-jitsu and describing what that they're doing to that person. So it was like, no matter who you were, it was like there was something in it to captivate you, to catch your attention, and to disgust you. And just 20 years ago, no one would have cared. It would have just been some poor black guy in the city who died because he was resisting arrest with the police, and he was on drugs. And Shelby, that's what I just call it a murder because, I don't like to judge things just based on seeing a video, but, I saw his kneel on that guy's neck for that long, and yeah, it looked like a murder to me, for sure. So let's see here. This one is going to be spike strips for a theft suspect. All right, so, and again, we don't know if this is actually what this was. This is just the description of the video, but when I hear theft suspect, I don't know why you're chasing a theft suspect, even if it's a stolen car, unless there's some serious violent felony where the community's at risk, there's some real exigency that you need to apprehend this person, then I just think they're too risky. But he was claiming inability to breathe from the moment he got out of his car, which is why I'd be interested in seeing the review. Yeah, it doesn't matter, Mark. You can't... a lot of people talked about they can't breathe. Could be that he just feels like he had a medical condition. Could be that he just didn't want to go to jail. So he was saying it, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've watched all those videos. He could have done whatever. It doesn't matter. You can't, we can't, it was just, yeah, it was just crazy.
But I'm back behind that vehicle from earlier tonight. We're headed northbound on Timberland.
He's behind a vehicle from earlier tonight.
And he's running again.
He's running again, so they've already chased him. So this is multiple times you chased him. Okay, now we got him kind of cornered. I just ran the patrol car. This officer's gonna pin him in. Nope. Now he's driving through the grass.
Spikes are set.
And if you're passing through on the YouTube channel, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 250 before the Sunday broadcast with my buddy Sean. Alright, now he's on the highway. This is what they call a pit maneuver. So what happens is you have like one vehicle driving, and then you have the patrol car come up behind it, and we'll try to like nudge the rear end of the vehicle, and it'll sort of spin out of control. And you only really do it, you're supposed to, as far as I'm concerned, is when there's a real exigency, like we need to stop this person's vehicle, we need to do it now. And under road conditions where you're not going to spin the vehicle out and into traffic or something. It looks like the road conditions are good. It's nighttime, doesn't look like there's a lot of traffic, so that's good, but we don't know. All I have is theft, which to me, I'm like, it's property. We're not going to chase people for property, but that's just me. What forms of restraint are allowed that would also exacerbate someone's health or drug-induced problems? Handcuffs, I would say. Just putting someone in handcuffs could exacerbate problems. Setting them in the back of a patrol car, being in jail. Yeah, all those things I would think could exacerbate. Hey Braxton, thanks for coming by. Can you expand on what saving children is? Alright, so we have a failed pit maneuver. And we're going to try again with another pit maneuver. Now, be careful here because we see oncoming traffic. So we see another car coming here. And if you spin this vehicle out, you need to worry about him colliding with this vehicle. It's a patrol car. Alright, the vehicle spun out.
What's your hands? Get your damn hands up! Don't freaking move!
You got him at gunpoint. Don't hurt me, don't hurt me.
Pull him through. Get out. Get on the ground.
Pulled out of the window.
Oh, we're good. We're good. We've got enough people on top of him.
That's good. So we have another. So they drag him out to the window. It looks rough, right? But you know, and he's fleeing from the police. He's got his hands at the window. The door's not opening up. You know, I mean, just pull him through the window. I don't really have an issue with both. If everyone can control his arms, drag him out, and put him on the pavement, get him handcuffed. If he scratches his belly a little bit, and you feel as though you want to end this, you want to get him out of that vehicle quickly and put him on the ground and get him in handcuffs, I'm okay if he gets scratched up a little bit, given, you know, he's fleeing from the police, putting everyone in danger like that. Are there guidelines for speed during a pit so the car doesn't take a death roll? So King Kush, yeah. So I don't think there's so much variability depending on where you are in the country. So each department has their own sort of rules. But generally speaking, they're usually something we'll read more like, you know, it's more like based on the totality of the circumstances that you don't think it's going to flip. So I don't think it's usually like at this speed. There may be agencies that do a certain speed. Generally speaking, you're not going to do like a pit maneuver unless it's under like extreme circumstances, or you're in a department like some rural department that lets you do all kinds of stuff like that. My agency doing a pit maneuver was really, really rare. I never did one in my career. I went and took the class and learned how to do one, but I never did one. Putting so many lives in danger, and says don't hurt me. Yeah, I hear you, Tracy, and I'm good. Like, they shouldn't kick his ass, but yeah, if he gets dragged out of the window and put on the ground, I'm okay with it. What I did like to see was I like to see this officer. I'm gonna play it back here. All right, so it's a little rough exit, but they're not beating through. Put him on the ground. Put him on the ground.
Oh, we're good. We've got enough people on top of him.
We're good. Enough people on top of him. Like, so this officer's like, these things a lot of times, some of this is just opinion, is that they can kind of spiral out of control when you get this, we call it the polyester pileup in policing, where you got all the officers run and then everyone's piled up and it's just, everyone's going crazy and everything kind of gets out of control. This officer says, whoa, we've got enough people. There's 3 people taking this guy into custody. Back up, and you see this big fella sort of stops.
He's on the ground.
Watch this big fella stop.
Oh, we're good. We've got enough people on top of him.
We got enough people on top of him. He slows everything down. These guys are in custody. And it sends a signal to the other officers like, hey, this is over. We got enough people on top of him. So that's a great job of de-escalation, you could call it. But it's de-escalating the officers, that keeping people from getting into that polyester pileup and someone getting hurt.
311, he's in custody. You're pretty desperate, man. Endangered a lot of people's lives earlier and again.
All right, and then the officers seems respectful and treats the guy with dignity and respect, and that's another thing I like to see. You do your job better, and it's a lot easier to do your job when you treat people with dignity and respect out there. Is mine in acting insane? He was a huge guy, agitated into a frenzy. I don't know, River City Tighter, what you're looking at in that video, but I was a police officer for 9 years and have dealt with all kinds of people that have been in frenzies and have been drugged out of their mind and acting insane and were real dangerous. And I watched those released videos of George Floyd, and George Floyd was not some drugged out person out of his mind acting incredibly violent. He was agitated and not happy and not completely cooperative, but by no means did the description that you just provided accurately describe what I saw. And I know I've dealt with people who've been violent. I dealt with people who've been drugged out and dangerous, and that was not that. So I don't think that's an accurate representation of reality. The police get trained on how to handle people. Depends on where you are. Yeah, I've seen the body cams. The police get trained on how to handle people. It depends on what you mean. So it depends on where you are. There's like 18,000 different police agencies in the United States. There are some agencies who do a really good job. They go through scenario training. They work on de-escalation. Officers are well trained and treat people with respect, and everything's good to go. And then you have some other agencies that, it's just a completely different culture. So there's a ton of variability. But so it depends, which is not a very satisfactory answer, but it's the honest answer. cop gets trained to lie. They are human traffickers. Okay. There may be some validity to that. I don't know what you mean exactly. And then, so topical, we need you to create the full video. Yeah, I've already done. If you go to the YouTube channel and you go back, you can see my breakdown of the earlier videos. I haven't done the body cam footage. I'll do that when the state releases a better version, not the ones that are out now. Did they determine Floyd was $20 with China counterfeit? I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. He could have gone in there with a gun and robbed the place at gunpoint and pistol whipped the clerk and took a shit on the store owner's head and shot at the police. When he was on the ground with his hands behind his back and was no longer a threat to those officers, you don't get to put your knee on his neck and strangle him to death. It just doesn't matter. So I'm not going to talk anymore about the George Floyd thing tonight, because I don't think there's any justification, and I don't think it's worthy of any further discussion at this point. So, sorry.
Eric Jones, Chief of Police for the Stockton Police Department. This is a summary of a recent officer-involved critical incident that will include body-worn camera footage. Out of transparency, accountability, and objectivity, we have a current investigation that is the officer-involved critical incident protocol.
Yeah, I think
have multiple agencies involved.
Salvador saying police get too heavy-handed. I think there are instances where police are too heavy-handed. Lots of instances where too heavy-handed. I think that American policing in general is too heavy-handed, but I think that a lot of the reason American policing is too heavy-handed is not necessarily because of the police. It's because of the society that we've created that created an environment where officers have to use heavy-handed tactics in order to conduct the function that they've been assigned. So like there's a lot of structural things that go into creating a violent society, like far more violent than
The San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office, Bureau of Investigations, San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, Coroner's Office, as well as even the State Department of Justice. This is so that no one agency is investigating themselves. We also have an administrative investigation and review underway to take a look at this incident. We take these situations very seriously.
I'm Captain Eric Kane of the Stockton Police Department, and I oversee our investigations division. One of our responsibilities is to investigate officer-involved critical incidents. We do this with other state and local agencies. I would now like to brief you on an officer-involved
that's kind of what I'm getting at, Salvador.
That occurred on July 15th, 2020.
We live in a society where there's just a ton of fear on the part of police. They fear the communities that they work in. And one of the reasons I believe that they fear those communities is just because we lived in such a violent and heavily armed society. And even if police officers aren't themselves engaged in encountering these types of things, there's enough of it. There's enough of a level of violence within the society and within the culture at large that it seeps into the consciousness of police officers and it affects their behavior and their attitudes. And if we want to make police less violent, I think that it's not always looking within the institution of policing. It's looking at society at large and creating a more peaceful and just society, providing more opportunities for people. When we do these things, the level of violence will come down, and then the level of police violence will come down with it. Most police violence, when you look at it at a statistical, like if you look at the stats, if you look at a bunch of incidents over the course of a year, like every shooting in country, if you could do that, if you try to do that, what you'll see a strong association between violent behavior on the part of suspects and violent response by police officers. So police officers shoot people, it's usually they got a knife, they got a gun, they're doing some kind of violent action. So if we want less violence from police, the easiest way to do it, as far as I'm concerned, is to try to create a society where there's less violent crime. I don't know.
Stockton police officers were actively looking for 39-year-old
River City,
Antoine Boris, who was wanted in connection with the June 1st, 2020
I do hold some autonomy, and I don't want people coming in and just talking trash about some dead person.
Shot multiple
it's not
times
appropriate as far as I'm concerned.
In the 300 block of Florence Street. Through the homicide investigation, detectives learned Boris was responsible for Thomas's death. Antoine Boris had an outstanding homicide warrant issued for his arrest from this incident and was considered armed
so we have
and dangerous.
A person who's wanted for a homicide.
He was recently released from prison in April 2020 and was on post-released community supervision. Boris was also on federal probation for felon in possession of a firearm and other fraud-related crimes.
Wow.
Around 12 p.m. on July 15th, 2020, officers located Baris sitting inside a vehicle in an apartment complex in the 5200 block.
So what we have so far is we have a person who's wanted for a homicide, that's thought to be armed and dangerous, who's just been released from federal prison for firearms charges. So yeah, you've got a situation where you got to be careful here. Okay, but police work is not a game. Can't be easy. No, it's definitely not. But we need really high standards,
to prevent Baris's
training,
escape,
and
officers attempted to block him in with their vehicles, at which point Baris rammed a police car with his vehicle. Uniformed officers gave Baris multiple commands to surrender. However, Baris accelerated backwards in the path of an undercover officer. That officer, fearing for his safety, and two uniformed officers, also fearing for the officer's safety, fired their weapons, striking Baris. Officers continued to give commands to Baris to exit the vehicle and noticed there was no movement from inside. An officer utilized less lethal shotgun beanbag rounds to break out the windows so officers could safely approach for an emergency extraction. Officers were able to remove Baris from the vehicle and rendered medical aid. Medics arrived and transported Baris to a local hospital where he died from his injuries. During a search of Baris's vehicle, investigators located a loaded handgun with an extended magazine underneath Baris's seat. Investigators also located an illegally modified loaded assault rifle with an extended magazine within arm's reach of Baris.
The stock taken off of
Investigators believe Baris is responsible for other shootings, street gang activity, and violent crimes committed within the city of Stockton. Through intelligence gathering, we have learned there are community members who are fearful of Baris.
I'll take a look at that if that's ongoing, Philip.
We are encouraging anyone with information to please contact the Stockton Police Department's investigation unit at 209-937-8323. Or, if you would like to remain anonymous, call Stockton Crime Stoppers at 209-946-0600.
Can you send me a link in the chat?
You may also submit a tip online at StocktonPD.org.
I'll check it out. I don't see it.
You will now hear the radio traffic from the officers who arrived on scene, along with seeing the body-worn camera footage of the incident. Please remember, some of these images may be disturbing, and viewer discretion is advised.
All right. Stop now! Dog.
Stop now! John, get out of there. Close to give us a 900 on channel 1.
Stop now! Right, this is the white vehicle here. This looks like the suspect vehicle.
Car signal 900 channel 1.
Or no.
Watch out, John!
No, it's this black vehicle.
Hold your fire! 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 Everybody hold your fire!
Okay, so we see this officer here. Died from his injuries. So they're saying that he drove back towards the undercover officer. All right. So when I see that, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, yeah, it looks like the thing is just someone talking about it, so it doesn't look like live footage. You hear the agency here talk about this as the officer being driven at and shot because they were being driven at by the suspect, and that's part of it. But I think the bigger part of this is what is the person wanted for, and they're wanted for a homicide. They're thought to be armed, and dangerous. So it's not just the fact that they're driving at the officer, because if they're just driving at the officer, get out of the way, like back up, it didn't look like he was going to be. There was nowhere for him to go. So I'm not comfortable with that as being the best explanation. This looks like probably a justified shooting to me. If you have a person who's trying to flee and they're armed and dangerous, they already murdered someone, they're responsible for a bunch of other shootings in the community, and they're driving at an officer and then trying to take off. It's not a shoplifting, it's not a theft, it's not something small. This is something serious. They present a real danger to the community, and I think that makes more sense in terms of a justification for why you shoot someone. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what the decision was made for, but that's why I would shoot somebody in that situation more so than they're just driving at me. If that makes sense to everybody. And this one is going to be Phoenix. And this is a video.
This is either it or I'm lost.
Of another incident that we did on another broadcast, me and my buddy Sean. So him and I will break this down again, him and I, next week on Sunday. It was like a domestic violence call. This is in Phoenix, Arizona. You can see the officer taking off his glasses.
You like all that helpful info we got from our complainant? Send me on this side.
They're making fun of the fact they don't have good info. You like that helpful info? They're sort of joking. This is not a high keyed up. Like the officer just belched. It's like this is just another routine. You're working your shift, you do this 20 times in the course of your shift, this is no big deal kind of a thing. There are other calls where you're rolling in and you're like, wow, this...
Yes, all the questions, get the officers out here faster. I don't have time for this. Yeah, great, thanks.
All right, knocks on the door. Please. And you see where the officers are standing. He's just sort of standing facing the door. Like they're not doing anything wrong here. That means outside of the door frame, they're doing a decent job the way you normally would approach a door. But they're not. This is not like down the hallway making announcements. Let's get the complainant on the call. They're treating this like a domestic violence call, like nothing abnormal. And this one I have already seen. You see he's got his wrist up here, looking at his. It's his flashlight.
How you doing?
Comes out, boom.
Whoa!
And he's got a gun in his hand.
Phoenix Police!
They announce himself, Phoenix Police. No guns drawn by the officers. And this guy comes out, he's got a handgun right here in his right hand. Throws open the door and starts entering the door frame with a gun in his hand. So right there as an officer, I'm getting my weapon. I'm going to draw my weapon, point it at the guy and give him the commands to drop the gun, maybe duck behind the corner, get some cover.
How you doing? Whoa!
He hasn't leveled the gun at anyone. He sort of puts it behind his back, almost as if the guy came out of the door with the gun, thinking he's going to confront a neighbor and tell them to F off and scram and leave him and his old lady alone while they have their argument. And he realizes when he opens the door that it's the police, and he tries to conceal the gun behind his back. That's what I see. I don't know. This is just what I see. We'll see it again.
How you doing? Whoa! Put hands! Hands! Holy back away from the gun. Get back and get out here. Come out here. Come out. I'm not going to shoot you. Come out here. Come out here. Over here. Over here. Get down on your knees. Get down on your knees. Get down on your knees. Just get down. Just get down. Relax.
You okay? Because it's dark and someone just knocked on the door! Baby!
Did you put out the 998? I did. Okay. Right here, right here, right here, right here. Come on, come with me, come with me. Hey, get back. Jerome, go back inside. Go back inside. Go back inside.
That's horrible.
Is there anybody else in the house?
There's nobody else in the house.
The gun is right there on the floor. Just stay right here.
Baby.
And
no, he needs to stay right there.
Get this guy in handcuffs and get him some help if you can.
There's nobody else in the house?
we don't know if he's got
There's
the gun
nobody
in
else
his
in the house?
hand or what the rest of is happening with this call.
Hey.
They did say.
Just relax. Stay right
said
there.
Phoenix police. They knocked on the door.
Okay, fine. Okay.
The guy came out with a gun in his hand. And looked,
Neighbors called, said you guys were arguing and fighting.
There was fighting over here.
Put the gun behind his back, and then the officer to the right fired several rounds and shot him. My problem right now is like they're treating it like there's another threat inside of the apartment. I'm not sure. They don't know anything about what's going on. They just had a guy come out with a gun. But now that you get this woman out here and this looks like this is a domestic that's sort of, and this guy's, I want to get this guy help.
I knocked on the door. I yelled, "Phoenix police!"
Explaining
he opened the door with a gun.
Shot the guy isn't as important as getting him help now. So he's laying there. He's been shot. We need to render aid.
It's okay.
It's not okay.
435 Lincoln. Just so you know, we are code 4. The subject is down.
Thanks for coming in.
We got
Thanks for coming
the
by.
female party separated.
We got this. Yeah, we got the female party separated. We need fire here, guys. And you guys need to provide aid because he's.
Yeah. Okay, you need to just come with me. Okay, we just want to clear away from the scene. That's all. Okay, come with me. You're fine.
You're fine.
Okay.
This is crazy because
Yeah.
literally the other night
I don't think these guys meant to shoot this guy. I think this was like a startled, saw the gun. The guy put it behind his back, and the officer made a decision to shoot. I don't know what he was. I don't think it was a good decision to shoot.
He had it out, and when he saw it was behind his leg, and he started walking at me. I drew out on him. I was on him, but I didn't shoot. My partner shot.
I don't think the guy who shot him said, "Oh, I'm going to go shoot some guy for no reason." He saw a gun, he felt scared, he shot him.
Was anything going on inside?
But I don't think that if.
Because your neighbor
I think it could have been avoided if he made a better decision.
He heard you guys going at it.
Arguing, fighting. Literally, we were making salsa and playing Crash Bandicoot, so there may have been some screaming from PlayStation, but it's it wasn't domestic violence or anything.
Well, and that's how the call came out, and that's why we knocked on your door.
Yeah, the officer was like sort of just explaining himself.
Baby.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in that position. I wouldn't want to have shot that man. It's one of those ones where I look at it and I say, I understand how a reasonable officer could shoot that person, but I think it was a bad decision to shoot him.
No, you can't go back over there. You can't go back over there. Okay? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you're right as a person. I think he tried to get on the ground, the gun behind him, and he was popped anyways.
If I say here, can you?
I agree, person. I think that is exactly what happened. The thing is that, and this is just terrible. What the person does, so like the way that officer react isn't necessarily like a rational, I saw this, I'm making a decision. When you're encountered with someone with a gun, people can freak out and shoot and see it in a way that isn't necessarily like they can see the person moving their hand back and interpret it, and maybe they're not even seeing it. They're seeing an angle of it, and it happens fast, and it's so difficult to judge. I personally feel confident that I wouldn't have shot him. I'm pretty sure he died. Because I feel as though I would have been, when I was training regularly, I would have had enough trigger discipline, and I would have seen the gun, interpreted the behavior, and not shot him, pointed my gun at him, and been scared shitless. I can't say for certain I wouldn't have shot him, though, which makes me think if a person is in a position where I myself think I can see myself making that same mistake, I hope not, I don't think I would, but I can see how it can happen, then it's hard to say, well, we need to punish them and put them in jail or whatever. That's the thing. It's just difficult. It's not showing gun unless he knows there's a threat, but cops are too quick to shoot. Cop could have drawn away to move. Yeah, and I think in an ideal world, that's what would have happened, Dean. And these things are so messy, and people are not perfect and not that well trained a lot of times. Like a lot of times, officers only go to the range once a year, if that, in some agencies. The idea that police officers are these super high trained, guys really proficient with their firearms, that know how to fight, that know how to do all these things, is just not an accurate representation of the profession. And I think this is just one of those instances where this is extremely tragic, and I think a mistake. and a bad shooting, not a shooting that I would want to be involved in any kind of way, but I don't think there's any kind of malicious intent. I think this is just a shitty sort of thing where this guy comes out, charges out of a door with a gun in his hand. Like we talked about earlier, when you inject guns into situations, you know, a lot of bad things happen.
Please go make sure he's okay.
And this poor woman wants to
I want to do that. I want to do that for you.
You can contain me right here.
Sweetheart, I want to do that for you, but I'm leaning towards the fact that he's not. Okay.
He's not okay.
He's
Where'd
not.
you shoot him? Or where did
I
he
didn't shoot him. My partner shot him because he came at us with a gun. He came out of the apartment and walked towards us with a gun in his hand. I don't know what he's going to do, and he yelled some noise and yelled some words, whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but. So she says,
it could be
so
that,
upstairs calls.
I mean,
when he calls back,
a lot of times people have guns because they're
hot it out.
scared.
And while we're on the way, dispatcher says, just so you guys know, weren't able to get any further info from the complainant. He says he just is going to answer yes to all the questions. He just wants the cops here now. Okay, great. Thanks for that. You know, so we come walking up to the
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, Jay. But the problem,
I pull to the left.
The problem with that, this Jay is sort of like saying, well, you know, if you go running out the door with a gun in your hand, you know, bad things could happen. It's too bad, so sad. That's one way to look at it. But the way I look at it is now we have images of, well, first of all, I don't think the guy was trying to hurt the police. I think he just walked out of his front door with a gun, and you shouldn't get shot for that. I mean, unless you're pointing the gun at an officer, or you're pointing a gun at a citizen, or you present a real immediate threat to somebody, holding a gun is not illegal. But aside from that, it's what this does to the rest of the community. So when people see this, most people are going to see this and they think, oh, that cop just murdered that guy for no reason. A lot of people are going to think that, and their trust in the institution is going to go down. And then when they think, oh, you know, not everybody's going to think this, but there are a certain number of people will say, you know, I'm not going to call the police about this. I don't trust the police. You know, I'll take care of that myself. You know, I live in a neighborhood in Detroit or Albuquerque or Phoenix or St. Louis, and somebody robs my brother or my cousin. Am I going to call the police, or me and my friends going to go take care of it myself? And if we do, you know, that's how homicide rates go up. Vigilantism, people taking matters into their own hands because they don't trust the state. So these types of incidents are extremely damaging to the public trust, which puts all of our lives at risk. The entire community is placed at risk because of that. So it's incumbent upon us as mature adults and citizens to create an institution that doesn't use violence unless it's absolutely necessary, because the cost of it is the safety of ourselves, our neighbors, our children. So here we go. All right. Yeah, back to Plu 100% but they fucked up here. I agree. I think that's a terrible shooting. I don't think it's a good shooting, and I'm sure the person who shot this guy probably feels like absolute shit about it. But I don't think it's a case of like this person, like a murder where this person, like the George Floyd thing, I look at that and I say, oh, they murdered that man. This one, I don't think this is anywhere near that. Yeah, and you know, people go to the door. I mean, this guy goes to the door. Maybe he's been drinking beers all night. He's got the gun. He had a beef with one of the neighbors earlier, and he goes to the door with the gun. You shouldn't get shot for that. The police officers need to have enough trigger discipline and enough control to not discharge their weapons. I expect that. Now, at the same time, I can also understand how someone could discharge their firearm because they interpret a threat that wasn't necessarily the threat that was actually present, and there's a mistake and people feel shitty about it, and it's to a certain extent just part of reality it's part of the nature of the game. It's horrible. It's never, especially in a country with 340 million you get the bad cop, the bad shooting makes, and here are scenarios, and across the spectrum, social media can cherry pick incidents. Absolutely. I was just saying that, like, all you need is a handful of them, and they're always going to be here. So we need to create, and the reason I'm doing this, and the reason Sean and I do it, and I do podcasts and all this other stuff, and when I'm studying at school, is because I want to bridge that gap between public and police perceptions of police violence, because nothing good comes out of these images being viewed out of context and a loss of trust. We need to like try to all understand what it is that's happening, what's causing these things. And a lot of times it's broader policies, like things like poverty and institutionalized discrimination and housing segregation, a lack of education, poor health care, too many guns, lack of this or that. It can all contribute to an environment that lead people into situations where they come into contact with the police and engaging in violence, or they're having a gun and people die, and we've all seen what happens around the country. It can destabilize our society.
Hello, I'm Travis Warren, Public Information Officer for the Reno Police Department. This critical incident community briefing is intended to inform you of an incident that occurred in the 6900 block of South Virginia Street in the city of Reno on July 26, 2020. You're about to see relevant video footage and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to this case, so you can have a better understanding of the events of that day based on what we know right now.
I appreciate it.
This video is not intended to draw any conclusions on whether or not the involved officers acted consistent with our policies or the law until all facts are known and the investigation is complete.
Doing this together.
A word of caution, the images and information you're about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or defending against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch.
It's a good learning process.
In addition, there may be strong language used by those in the video.
Plays a big role.
Viewer discretion is advised, especially for young children and sensitive viewers.
We would always say alcohol was
suspect. My name is Tom Robinson, Deputy Chief with the Reno Police Department. I'm going to give you an overview of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on July 26, 2020.
What I can say is I never once in my entire career responded to a call, dealt with something violent, dealt with something outlandish that put the community at risk, where I said afterwards, that guy was smoking the reefer, and the reason he was doing what he was doing is because he was smoking the reefer. But I can say weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, dope, cannabis. But like this propaganda that exists that people I know people don't buy it nowadays, but when I was a kid, people smoke weed and they go crazy and they do all kinds of crazy shit and they can be violent and they're going to go start using heroin and robbing people. I never saw anything remotely look like that.
Before I give you the overview, I want to brief you on the process. Anytime an officer discharges their firearm and it strikes someone, it is our policy to have the shooting investigated by an outside agency in accordance with the Washoe County Officer-Involved Shooting Protocol. These investigations are complete and thorough.
You're like a
they typically include interviews of those involved, collection and review of any available recordings, and detailed examination of evidence. The investigating agency will evaluate the facts and evidence and make a determination as to whether or not any criminal charges are appropriate. When these investigations are complete, they are submitted to the Washoe County District Attorney's Office for criminal review. The District Attorney's Office evaluates the case and also evaluates whether or not criminal charges are appropriate. After their review, the Washoe County District Attorney's Office provides a public report with their findings.
Which is good because
uniformed Reno police officers who have regular contact with the public are equipped for any camera.
I'm not going to play it all. All right, incident summary is the good stuff.
On July 26, 2020, at around 8:35 in the morning, Reno police officers responded to the parking lot in the 6900 block of South Virginia Street to assist a Washoe County Sheriff's deputy who requested backup.
295 Reno, 1060. Steering out to 6950 South Virginia Street to cover county on a traffic stop. They have their units going code 3 to cover. They're not being clear if they want Reno code 3 to cover or not. And Sam 295, they're now requesting that you expedite NORA 140 copies.
So they're saying that, so basically what that transmission meant was that there's another agency that's asking for help. I don't know if they want you, their people are responding code 3, which means they're coming with lights and sirens. I don't know if they want you to come with lights and sirens. Oh, now they're saying, they want you to expedite. They want you to come with lights and sirens. They need help. So right off the bat, you're like, whoa, another agency is calling my agency and asking for help. This is a big deal.
Code 3, South Meadows and Gateway.
And Sam 295 for information, we're landline with a reporting party at the Kitty Martin Lodge advising that the officer is in trouble. We're trying to get further.
Okay.
It is not.
So there's someone calling from a Kmart saying that officer's in trouble.
Not uncommon for neighboring agencies in this region to assist one another. When the Reno police officers arrived, they observed deputies pointing tasers at the suspect, a 43-year-old Reno resident.
Yeah, I would say so, Chechen. If you, Sleepy Chechen just asked if interagency comms take priority. So if like another agency asks you for help, does that take priority over other things? And I would say that if, like something like this, where it's an officer asking for help, that always sort of just jumps right to the top of the list, whether it's your agency or another agency. So immediately everyone's going to be, anyone who's near that is going to be rolling. Because, and especially like he just said, there's a lot of interagency work where people are backing each other up. There are a lot of jurisdictions, metropolitan areas, especially across the United States, where you'll have like 25, 30 different agencies that all encompass this larger metropolitan area, and crime moves. So, you're conducting your investigations, you're constantly working with other agencies. People are driving through different jurisdictions. You're working together. You back people up on traffic stops. And the new communications devices are getting better at actually being able to patch in on the same radio frequencies. So, that's a long answer to a short question.
Who was not complying with the deputy's commands.
Okay, this is Reno footage. All right, so we just got a less lethal munition.
The Reno police officers attempted to assist the deputies in getting the suspect into custody. At one point, while the deputy was giving verbal commands to the suspect stepped towards the deputies.
All right, body one camera.
Why are you past what? Past what? Dude.
Can you go down on your knees, please?
No.
Let's talk about this. Let's figure this out.
I'm going to run. I'm sorry.
No. Talk about this.
Here's my things. Here.
This guy's in like wicked shape.
A deputy moved around him and deployed his taser but missed.
And I don't know what they're trying to stop
one of
this
the
guy
taser
for.
darts struck a Reno police officer in the knee, causing him to unintentionally discharge his firearm once, striking the suspect in the right shoulder.
Oh boy. So we're going to have a taser deployment. He misses. So the officer shoots the taser, misses with one of the probes. It hits an officer, and an officer discharges their firearm because they get hit with a taser. And that is a no bueno. That's not going to fly, because why is your finger on the trigger? Unless you've made a decision that there's a threat in front of me, I've made a conscious decision that I'm going to engage that threat, discharge my firearm. Your finger has zero business being on that trigger. And if you have an accidental discharge because you get hit with a taser, it means your finger was on the trigger before you made the decision to shoot, because it was unintentional. So obviously you didn't make the decision to shoot. So that's not going to fly. That's no good. And there's, like I said, there's a crossfire thing there, and they just shot somebody without a good reason for doing it.
Talk about it.
Here's my things. Here.
Lay down.
Lay down.
Lay down.
Going on.
Lay down. Go to your knees. Go to your knees.
Yeah, I would say so. Shelby, this is so Shelby says this seems 100% on the officers. I agree. This person, you should be able to handle this without accidentally shooting them. That just doesn't fly. This isn't someone made a mistake. These were failures by multiple officers in this video. This is a failure of their training. I would agree. So failure training, failure, like individual failure on that officer for having his finger on the gun, all kinds of problems. I think even Barney Fife would have screwed that one up. What an ass. Yeah, it's just there are some basic rules that you're taught as soon as you're in the military, you're in policing, you're just taught you don't put your finger on the trigger unless you've made the decision to engage the target and shoot. Whether that's a plastic paper target or a person with a gun, you don't put your finger on the trigger until you've made the decision to shoot. And that's just the way it is. So it's snow cool. And then the angles, like pieing out and tasing, and then tasing your own partner. Just really sloppy Keystone Cops kind of like clown show, I think is what Sleepy Chechen called it. I think that's a great description. And this is not just like, this is a pretty big failure.
Here's my things. Cheers.
There's a bunch of moving parts coming together and multiple mistakes, like Shelby said, and all those multiple mistakes added up to something ridiculous. And my only hope is that he gets into custody without getting hurt anymore. He's already shot in the arm.
Get down! Get down! Get down on the ground! Down on the ground!
It's absolutely ridiculous that this man got shot.
Lay down! Lay down!
No, my shoulder.
You're okay. We're gonna get you out. Come over. Sit up.
I think it was me. I got shot with a taser. I thought, fuck.
You're good? Are you good?
Yes, I'm good.
So this officer just said, I think it was me. I got hit with the taser and I think it was me. And I'll tell you, getting hit with one taser probe, I've been shot with one taser probe before in the ass. I can show you guys a video of that at some point. That it stings and it hurts, but it's like getting hit with a needle. It doesn't cause your muscles to lock up or anything like that. And even if it did, the gun shouldn't go off because it's only going to go off if your finger's on the trigger. And that guy's unarmed. He's non-compliant. But there's no reason to shoot him right there. So your finger should not be on. I've said that like 25 times.
I got it.
You're okay.
I don't think they killed him.
You're okay.
You'd have to undo it.
You're okay. You're okay.
Got it?
All right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Talk to me right now. Talk to me right now. You're okay. Okay? Talk to me. We have medical on the way right now.
Okay. This officer's freaking out, and she should be.
It's right there.
You're okay. Okay, you're okay.
All my stuff's right there.
Okay, you're okay.
Can I possibly get out of this?
Yes, medical's here for you, okay? Just talk.
It's kind of sweet, actually, that this officer here is being so, like, it's almost like she's more upset by this than the guy whose shot is.
Talk to me.
Can I stand up and
Talk to me. What's your birthday?
Can I have some water, please?
What's your birthday?
The officer's he's tourniqueting in the guy's arm, which is fine because he's, they're going to
Okay.
go right in the medical.
Were you born and raised there?
Yes, I was. I was born.
Yeah, the guy shot is like, I'm fine. Just can you get me some water, ma'am? I'd like some water. And the officer's like, it's okay. Calm down. We're going to get you help. And she's like rubbing his leg. And I know if I'd been shot, I would actually like to have somebody being that nice to me. So I'm okay with her being super sweet. I'm looking at it this way. I'm a teacher. Okay, so this shall be, if half of my students fail a test, that's not on them, that's on me. This strikes me as the same scenario. The officers didn't hear what they said. Yeah, I would agree, Shelby. When I see this, it's very Keystone Copy, the big circular firing squad. Everyone sort of seemed like no one seemed to know what they were doing. There's multiple agencies there. It's a total, I think like the scientific term is it was a total shit show is what I think you call it, the technical term. That's an old, I do that joke all the time. I need new jokes. And there's just individual failures by several officers, and all those failures added up to an incident where they shoot some guy for no good reason. And I don't think it's just a matter, like Shelby saying, of there's an individual problem. Like if she gives a test to her classroom and one of them fails it, or two of them fail the test, then it's probably those kids. They screwed up on their test. But if you give the test and half your class fails it, then as a teacher, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say either the test is too hard or I'm not teaching these kids what they need to know to pass the test. So it's an excellent point, Shelby. Let's see here. Getting shot sucks, but at least it's over quickly. I've never been shot, Sleepy Chechen, but I can imagine it does suck. No, thank you. I've seen lots of people get shot. I fortunately have not been on the receiving end of any bullets yet, anyway. His situation probably, yeah, I don't think they have the skills there or the training or it was a disaster. Where did this happen? This was in Reno. And I think someone said Reno 911. It kind of reminds them of that. The only upside to all of this is this woman is really sweet.
Girls are right up the street.
And I think this guy lives. That's even better, right?
The suspect was taken into custody. Officers and deputies immediately administered first aid until paramedics arrived on scene and transported him to an area hospital for treatment. The officer that discharged his firearm also had to be transported to the hospital to have the taser probe removed from his knee. The suspect suffered a non-life-threatening injury and has...
you caught a ricochet when you were young. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
Since been released from the hospital. He was issued a citation for reckless driving and obstructing and resisting an officer by the Sparks Police Department, who was conducting the officer-involved shooting investigation.
In the coming months, the Reno Police Department Office of Internal Affairs will review all relevant information from this case and will make a determination as to whether the officer's tactics...
So just what we heard there, that was all... They said that the person was driving recklessly and failed to comply with the officers. So this person was a reckless driver, got stopped by these officers. He's jacked up, yoked up in shape, and scared the shit out of him, apparently, because they didn't know they were doing like the whole what do we do kind of a thing, and everyone has their guns pointed at him, and they wheel out to taser him, and they taser one of their own officers, and that guy has an accidental discharge and shoots this guy in the shoulder. And based on his appearance and what I saw in the police shooting video, I'm assuming he's going to get paid. King Kush, you're absolutely right. He's going to get paid, and he's going to have as much creatine and protein powder as he can possibly consume. And he's going to be at CrossFit, like getting yoked 7 days a week. And the Reno Police Department is going to pay for all his creatine, all his protein powder, and for his gym fees at the CrossFit place. So in the end, he just
drawing
needs to
and
be
use
shot
of a
in the
deadly weapon
for
and use of force is within the policies and standardized procedures of the Reno Police Department.
That was ridiculous.
Those findings will be submitted to the Chief of Police for review.
There's no way that people are not going to get in trouble for that, and which they should. Just absolutely ridiculous.
Camera footage will be available at the
I
conclusion
definitely try to be the next Habib with the lawsuit cash. I'm looking forward to Habib making a comeback. Sleepy Chechen, who you got for the fight this weekend? You going with DC or Stipe?
Or our policies, please visit
He's going to get paid for poor training. Yeah, he's definitely going to get paid. It's going to end up costing the department more than it would have cost them to train this guy in the first place. All right, I apologize, guys, but I'm 2 hours in, and that's it for my video line for tonight. If you guys want to get more of this, if you found this useful, come back on Sunday. It'll be me and my buddy Sean. DC has a never count. Oh geez, I agree with you. DC is the man. Then every Wednesday I'm back here at 9 o'clock. And then on Sunday nights, my buddy Sean comes in. We were officers together. We worked investigations together and on the street together. And we have different sort of views on a lot of these things. And we argue about it. And it's a good time. If you want to see that, make sure you subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're on. And I really appreciate everyone coming by. Sleepy Chechen, I'm with you on DC. I'm in his corner. Thank you, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and see you Wednesday. And come by on Sunday if you want as well. Shelby will be here on Sunday. And thanks, Sleepy Judges. Thank you, everyone. And I again really appreciate having you guys. I can come on here and vent and talk about these things. I really enjoy it and appreciate you guys more than